We welcome you to this episode of Inse-Miliye. I'm Ms. Madhuri Sharma, faculty at Insurance Institute of India. In this interactive series, today, Mr. M.N. Sarma, who took charge of General Insurance Council on 1st August 2019. Prior to that, he was Chairman cum Managing Director of United India Insurance Company Limited, from where he superannuated. Mr. Sarma is a postgraduate in economics, graduate of law, and an associate member of the Insurance Institute of India. He joined the non-life insurance industry as a direct recruit officer in 1982 at New India Insurance Company Limited. He has worked in almost all areas of non-life insurance and in various capacities as Chief Regional Manager, Deputy Regional Manager in charge of ROs, and as GM Investments. He has significant experience of foreign operations and has worked as resident manager of New India in Curacao, Dutch Caribbean. He headed Ken India Insurance Company Limited in Nairobi, Kenya as its MD and CEO for about 4 years, during which time he was also the chairman of Tanzania Assurance Company Limited, Dar es Salaam. He was also MD and CEO of Health Insurance Third Party Administrator, HITPA, the public sector company's own TPA, and it is in his tenure that HITPA became fully operational and started commercial operations. With this, once again, I extend a very warm welcome to you, sir, on this virtual platform of Insurance Institute of India, and hope to meet you in person on the premises of our institute.
Thank you. Small correction. I was at Ken India Assurance in Nairobi, Ken India Insurance Company, for 2.5 years, not 4.5. 4.5, I was at in the Caribbean. So in Ken India, I was there for 2.5 years.
Okay. So the very first obvious question that comes to my mind is that you have worked in the insurance industry at all levels, and your last stint was as chairman of United India Insurance. So as a part of the insurance industry, where you knew what were the challenges being faced when you were actually in the operations, now being Secretary General of the GI Council, where you are in a position to resolve those challenges and those issues. So how do you view your role now, and what kind of a roadmap do you envision for the GI Council?
Okay. General Insurance Council of India is a representative body of all the non-life insurers in India, non-life insurers and reinsurers in India. We have the total of around 44 members as on date, and we represent not only the non-life insurance companies, but also the standalone health insurance companies, the specialist insurers like Export Credit Guarantee Corporation and the Agriculture Insurance Company, and General Insurance Corporation of India, the national reinsurer, and we have about 10 FRBs, foreign reinsurance branches, that include Lloyd's syndicate in India. So we represent them all, and not only we represent their interests, but also we aid and advise these companies, our member companies, on sound business practices and a proper code of conduct in matters like this, in rendering services to the customers, sound practices, in development of sound practices and the proper business conduct. We advise them and guide them. And if any matter is brought to our attention about any company having, some grievance, or someone expressing some doubt about the conduct here and there, so we take it up with them, of course, in a persuasive way, and ensure that the grievance is properly addressed in a scientific way and resolved properly. Sometimes any grievance need not be resolved only to the satisfaction of the customer or to the satisfaction of the policyholder. It has to be fundamentally meeting the principles of insurance. There has to be transparency in their operations. There has to be a established proper conduct on the part of the insurance company. Once these are all established, we also advise the customer, write to them, explaining the circumstances and how we perceive the action taken by the insurance company to be sound and proper. So and then at the same time, if any mistake has happened in the in servicing the customer, and if it is not to the satisfaction, and when we examine, we find some lacunae in the conduct, we of course bring it to the notice of the insurance company and ensure that they make the required correction so that the overall image of the insurance industry remains protected. So that is the role of the General Insurance Council. Because my predecessors also have done their best in properly ensuring that the council does its functions properly and adequately. We still have a lot to be done, like in matters like tax matters, that we need to represent the interests of the insurance companies. Sometimes some tax matters that come up, on the top of it, they look like a little silly, but they do bother the insurance companies. So we do take them up with the respective boards, that is the Central Board of Direct Taxes or Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. We take it with them, the GST Council, and we see that these are properly understood, properly resolved. Any matters coming up before the courts, be it Supreme Court or the state high courts or a national consumer forum, any issues coming up before them. And if they need to be properly explained to the court and the proper rationale behind having a particular regulation or a rule, if we need to explain to them, we implead ourselves in those cases. And normally our view is respected by the courts because this is an independent view because of the technical expertise the Insurance Council, GI Council has. Courts also sometimes request us to give our views on matters. The recent Motor Vehicle Act, which was amended in the year 2015, the whole draft was run through us, and then we have studied at the council. And then we furnished our views, and they have been very well accepted by the Government of India, with due respect to the council's views, to the extent that they are normal and standard, and then they are impartial. They accept it. So that way, the council has a major role to play in representing the interests of the insurance companies, both with the regulator and the Government of India. And of course, give our views to the courts. So that's what the council is doing, and we'll continue to do that.
Maybe. This question is something which is a very hot burning topic in the industry today, as well as in amongst the policyholders. In this COVID scenario, we saw that a lot of policyholders faced very unwarranted deductions in the claim amounts, and GI Council had also come out with a rate list, which probably the hospitals were not adhering to. So what views does Council have with regard to the claim standardization as well as the rate standardization and data sharing of claims between insurers to ensure transparency? And how is this issue being resolved by the GI Council?
This is a very, very important question that you raised now, and I'm glad that you brought up this topic. See, I need to tell you that first of all, it's not correct to say that unwarranted deductions have been made. It's not that insurance companies, currently the tussle is between a regulated industry, a highly regulated industry, and absolutely not regulated hospitals, medical services. So you can imagine, and then I can also tell you the experience of the customers. Many of the customers that go to the hospitals in COVID, they were in a very pathetic situation due to the pandemic fear, the kind of fear it has created, and due to the heavy rush to the hospitals. The patients were simply waiting in ambulances in front of the hospitals for maybe a couple of hours, or ranging from a couple of hours to a couple of days. They were lying in ambulances and waiting for a bed in the hospital. in such a scenario where the demand is outstripping the supply, you can imagine what will happen to the pricing, where particularly there is no regulator. And that has happened completely, as we can all have, as we all have experienced it, we all know it, that the hospitals have started charging fully. At a time, on one hand, the hospitals have been telling that there is no known treatment for this. There is no standard treatment for this. There are no medicines, they said, they have for this. And that's how it's all started. Even in that scenario, they were being billed quite heavily. And it ranged from anything from about a lakh and or to maybe a couple of lakhs per day, that kind of a rating they were doing. And God knows what kind of a treatment that a patient is given worth a lakh or 1.5 lakh per day. So this is how the patients have been billed on one hand. And on the other, the insurance companies, when they face claims like this, they have a role to ensure that the hospitals, to the extent possible, charge reasonably. Because the policy says insurance companies will indemnify the patient for expenses reasonably and actually incurred. So what council did is to follow those rates. They said if government of India or a state government has come out with certain rates and said these are the reasonable rates and this is what we will pay for the patients that are treated in a private hospital, that has to be reasonable. Now, it's not. It definitely cannot be the intention of a government of India or a state government to cause undue loss to the hospitals. They do prescribe these rates in a reasonable way. So we have followed that measure, and to all our customers, that is about 5 to 7% among the total population who are insured, health insurance, about 7 minutes. We have certain rates agreed for contagious diseases, treatment costs for the contagious diseases. So this pandemic, COVID being a contagious disease, a highly contagious disease, we said we will follow those standards. It need not be, we need not write as COVID-19 treatment cost. So long as it's a contagious disease cost, we said these are the rates that we'll follow, and then we allowed accordingly. COVID, we started hearing for the first time sometime in around 20 January or 19 December, 2019 December. Prior to that, we haven't heard about that. So, and most of the agreements were there made earlier. So we went by the general description of a contagious disease, a treatment of contagious disease. What should be the methodology of reimbursing and how much it should be and all. So accordingly, we have been paying. And where in certain complications, certain complications arose and then the patient needed ECMO or that kind of treatment, ECMO, that kind of treatment beyond a ventilator. So we reimburse those costs also to the extent that they are reasonable and correct. So that way, the insurance industry, being a highly regulated industry, cannot exploit as people are trying to make it out. But at the same time, we don't say that public are not exploited. Public are exploited, definitely. In fact, that is our cry also. Why? Then whose responsibility it is to ensure that vulnerable sections are not exploited? It's the government. And if a SEBI could be established, a TRI could be established, an IRDA could be established to ensure that people are not exploited, there is all the more greater need for having a medical services regulatory authority. In fact, that need has been highly endorsed by the current situation, pandemic. So we have all the sympathy for our customers. We have gone by the individual profile of the patients and where they have comorbidities and all, if they also became COVID victims. We have just not straight away followed the council given rates. Council itself has given rates keeping in mind the government allowed rates. And we have allowed much more than that in several cases, depending on the comorbidities and as the situation warranted. So that is how the council has done it. Various ailments, there has to be standard protocols, and there has to be standardizing of the cost. All hospitals cannot be treated equally. There are some corporate hospitals which are of a very high standard and fantastic facilities. Naturally, their rates have to be also very high. Yeah, these are five-star hospitals. Their rates will be definitely higher. They can't be like any other nursing home across our state. So the rates range depending upon the place they are operating, depending upon the standard of the hospital, and depending upon the footfalls of the hospitals. All this taken into account, we in the PPN, the public-private networked hospitals, we have allowed these rates earlier. And if there is a need for relook at that, we'll definitely have a relook, and it's a continuous process. And then we will make the changes, required changes.
So one last question. The risk landscape has changed quite a lot with a lot of new kind of risk emerging, and with technology driving the industry also in a big way. So what role would the College of Insurance and Insurance Institute of India play to bridge this skill gap? I mean, what are your views on this? And if there is any possibility of collaborating with GI Council and addressing this issue so that we can reach out to all the companies in the industry?
Yes, this is again a wonderful suggestion. And
a major role.
According to me, the skills shortage is a smaller problem, a little smaller problem. The insurance companies today, the insurance industry today is getting pressed by the weight of the expectations of the policyholders. Many a time, many customers, they think that the moment they take an insurance policy, they heave a sigh of relief, and then they think that, oh, the job is done, I am protected now. And they think that they are fully protected. Unfortunately, it is not so. Because every insurance policy comes with certain terms, conditions, and the scope of cover articulated on the policy document. And there are policy terms, conditions, and unless these terms and conditions are followed, the benefit of insurance is not as they understood. The benefit of insurance is determined, decided, and then mentioned very much there. And ordinary people, many people don't really fully understand. So they think that they're covered. They're covered. They think they're all their losses in future will be paid. It's not all their losses. It is many a time, when a motor car accident happens, the motor car may be about a 5-year-old vehicle. And when a 5-year-old vehicle meets with an accident, maybe certain parts get damaged. So each part of the vehicle is a 5-year-old part. And for making the vehicle run once again as before the accident, you need to replace those parts. So there can be, if the insurance company replaces those parts with the second-hand parts, then there will be a lot of disputes between the insured and then the insurance company. The insured can always say that, how can you put a part, that part is much older than my vehicle's part, like that kind of questions will come. So what insurance companies do is to give a new part in the place of an old part and then recover some amount as a contribution from the insured for getting a better part in the place of their a half worn out part. So this is improvement cost that the customer is bearing. So this we use the word as depreciation. Depreciation on the on the original part we are giving to the insured, which is on account of the improvement the customer is enjoying when he getting a new part in the place of an old part. So naturally, these kind of things, we need to properly explain to the customers, and perhaps we need to tone down their expectations from what they are today to the realistic expectations. If we don't tone it down by properly explaining, scientifically explaining the reasoning, there is a scientific reason behind everything that an insurance company does. Behind every term, every condition, every word used in a policy document, there is scientific reasoning and logic. So add-ons that have come up. So how will our customers know all this? So they need to be properly explained. So some insurance companies also find it rather difficult to reach out to every customer and explain. And then insurance customers also are not receptive or not ready to listen to the fundamental, the understanding and all that at the time of making every sale. So that is where the Insurance Institute of India comes in. I suggest that Insurance Institute of India perhaps can develop some documentaries, films, maybe one on motor OD claims, maybe one on personal accident insurance, maybe one on the property insurances, how an accident happens, and upon happening, why the surveyor comes, and who the surveyor is, and who the investigator is. Like that, they need to explain to the people, and why the insured need to cooperate with the surveyor and the loss adjuster, and the surveyor loss adjuster, while giving the report, what all he will keep in mind, the policy terms, conditions and all, and how he works out the assessment, and how he makes it available to the insurance company, and how the customer is entitled to get a copy of the survey report, their rights. All their rights also need to be explained to them. All this can be done in a interesting way, by way of developing some films, small films, and these can be put on your website, and they can be shown, and then they can be explained, and customers must be encouraged to get to know the fundamentals of insurance and how the insurance itself works. So that is why I'm suggesting some documentaries to be developed and done. And if III is taking up such a thing, because the insurance, the General Insurance Council, the Life Insurance Council have also this responsibility of customer education, and the regulator, IRDA, also has that responsibility. So IRDA, the councils, and the Insurance Institute of India can together jointly take up this development of these films, and then put them in the library, put them on the website of the Insurance Institute, the GI Council, the IRDA and all, so that customers do get the benefit of knowledge.
So that's a very, very different and a very wonderful suggestion, and I'm sure we would like to take that up with customers. I think, sir, with this, we come to the end of this episode of Inse-Miliye. And thank you so much for being with us. And I really hope that we one day get to see you when it opens up, the lockdown is over. We get to have you on our premises at III at one of these sessions. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks a lot, Mrs. Sharma. Thank you.